Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Chris Neff, Senior Director of Innovation at The Community, a global creative agency. Chris has been Director of Interactive Production at 180 LA, Implementation Specialist at Microsystems, and Director of Digital and Experiential at Tool of North America. At The Community, Chris manages projects across digital, experiential, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality for some of the known brands in the world. Welcome here, Chris.
Thank you, Chuck, for having me. Very excited to be here.
So I'm dying to talk about innovation because that's what this podcast is really all about, and that's where you live. So this is a good connection. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what do you actually do in a day?
Oh man, I'm kind of all over the map, and I feel like it's indicative of where I've been in my career. Now here at The Community, we live by the ocean. We work in a bunch of different buildings. We're kind of taking over Brickell Avenue here in Biscayne Avenue, rather, in Miami. I think on a daily basis, I touch all the clients, and I'm responsible for kind of thinking, concepting. I sit more on the idea side, which is our creative side of the business here, and creative encompasses really strategy as well. So ideas is kind of a fusion of those two things. I sit on that side of the company, and part of my job is to educate everybody with kind of what's going on in the world of technology, how we might be able to infuse it and apply it to our clients. And then also a big part of my job is to actually materialize and to make. So it's kind of a fusion of those two things. I'm part educator. I love to concept and come up with my own stuff. And then, I can bring ideas to life, be it other ideas or my ideas, my team's ideas. So it's kind of all over the map. And every day is kind of stepping into a different thing to solve, a different headspace to think about. And it's a lot of fun and challenging.
So can you tell our listeners just some of the clients that the community deals with?
Sure, yeah. I mean, our most prominent client is Verizon. We also have Fios Business as well. We also have Corona, Red Bull, Magic Leap, and BMW, to name some of the others.
Yeah, I only wanted to say that because I knew you had such an impressive list.
They're fun, and they're all very different too. So, I thankful that we've added a couple clients in the last year. And really in the last 2 years, but obviously Verizon now we've been working on for several years, and Corona, a super long-standing relationship. So it's a great place to come into, and great client relationships where there's a lot of trust, which is important for a guy like me.
So you've been in innovation for a long time, even before the community. What have you seen change over the years?
Oh man. I feel like it's always changed. The problems that we need to solve have always kind of evolved, but it's there's also some core through lines, I think, too. So when I was coming up initially, digital was at that point still kind of the thing in the corner. Maybe the redheaded stepchild, but the thing in the corner that people were, I don't even want to say they were intrigued yet by it. They were just kind of like, okay, we know you have a place here. You have something to say, like people are starting to care, but we don't quite know how to utilize you yet. And that grew and that emerged as, social media, even before, I think, like the emergence of, I think, social on smartphone. But prior to that, what role Facebook played and the birth of APIs. And as we started to try to kind of utilize web technology, obviously Flash and some other interesting things, people started to get a little bit more excited about it. And then being in the creative advertising space and the marketing space, that seat at the table and that position in the room became more prominent. My team would grow. The people that would kind of pull me in, it just became more exciting. Not necessarily what we were doing was changing, but the perception and the involvement, which allowed us to, I think, be a little bit more holistic in how we attacked innovative, marketing kind of techniques, and how we could disrupt what was normal in marketing with some of this kind of this cool different stuff that we were constantly speaking about and breathing.
And those innovations along the way, were they generally initiated by the agencies in general or brands in general?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think, when we talk about creative advertising, like we always, creatives always want to kind of play with what's new and what's fresh. And a lot of times what drives that is also awards. So They feel like if they're playing in kind of the freshest space, they're more likely to win awards. Like, so that's it. So what's new? What's kind of interesting? What's disruptive? So that would fuse into the thinking, and it would necessitate being able to apply that innovation, or at the very least understand that innovation, so that we could sell it through and we could go make it. So that's one part of it. But then, yes, the clients absolutely were like, hey, over time, it's like, some of our clients happen to be very innovative in what they do. Verizon is an amazing innovation company, Magic Leap, amazing innovation company, BMW. I mean, all of them have aspects, but these people sit at the forefront of technology. So now here I come, and we represent like innovation in marketing, technology in marketing, to a huge tech company. So when you're working with the Googles and these type of companies, Facebook and obviously like a Verizon, you have to be really buttoned up with how you intend to use innovation and technology for the purposes of marketing. And you also, I think, need to be very pointed in how you use it. So there's for sure an appetite, but you can't just go broad and like, yeah, we want to use virtual reality. Okay, you want to use virtual reality, but how and why? And why are my consumers going to care about this? So we have to be able to answer all those questions.
So with brands that are innovative, like the leading edge companies, like you mentioned, like Verizon, do they ever pull in the agency to help them with their essentially what they're creating, what they're inventing, or do they just go invent it on their own and then come back and say, here, we want to promote this?
I think with the bigger tech companies, there are divisions that work alongside agencies to kind of create, so there are labs and there are places where innovation is happening and like kind of new products or new thinking are emerging, and we can work together with those clients to build at that juncture. But there are definitely, I think with Verizon in particular, many instances where they've been doing something that's really interesting and they need us to figure out how to tell that story. We've done that a lot for Verizon this past year. Which is tell that story of innovation, tell that story of how they're using IoT and what they're doing for connectivity and emerging with 5G. How do we tell that in a human way? How do we bring that story to the masses? So it's not about innovation from a technological standpoint, but it is sometimes about innovation from a storytelling standpoint, which could still use more traditional storytelling. But it's presented in a way that I feel like fuses with their core thinking, and it's simple to digest.
So do you basically start with the story and then say, okay, now this is how we can deploy technology to go along with that story over time?
I think it's always good to start with the subject matter sort of part of the story, right? It's part of what is used to develop the story or the script. I think unconventional storytelling might start with how it's being applied as well. If you focus on the medium or you kind of focus on where the user is, you can sort of back up to that piece of information you want to deliver. And then you use that story really to connect those two pieces, right? So hopefully that makes sense. But you have obviously a product or a thought or an idea or something you're demonstrating, and you kind of know who your consumer is. You kind of know where they live, or maybe you're very pointed. This is our target. This is exactly where we want to talk to them. And then we have to use storytelling, whether it's conventional or untraditional, to figure out how to put those two things together. And I usually sit at the kind of the intersection of that, but certainly in more of the unconventional, uncomfortable way of telling that story.
So where do you see the consumer fitting these days in relation to the Internet of Things? Do they have any concept of what's going on?
So they are, I think, more connected to us now, just based on obviously all of the points of interaction, given the Internet of Things, technology just having kind of exploded everywhere. So whether that's sensors that are monitoring them, screens that are out in the world, or even absence of screens that are showing them information or talking to them, we have obviously like voice now and kind of the growth, as you noted, where 56 million devices will hit the market this year. So there's all these new places that we're able to speak to people. And I think with that said, we have to be more pointed. We have to be smarter about kind of seamlessly fitting into that. So I think consumers have not only gotten smarter given all the technology, but it's just way more saturated in terms of the messaging. So if you don't know how to be, I think, a little bit more pointed and savvy about how you're speaking to them, a general thought that is hitting someone in their life in all of these ways, given all these points of interconnection, it's going to upset them, possibly annoy them, and they're just like, I don't want to hear this message anymore. Speak to me as an individual, not as a mass, not as a target, as an individual.
So years ago, did you think that voice would become a big deal?
I mean, once upon a time, it was obviously a huge deal with radio, and I think we've kind of come this full circle with the ability to now have voice as this delivery mechanism, this almost this catalyst of being able to talk to people in their homes, much like radio was once upon a time, right? So
that's a great connection, by the way.
I think about it because obviously I wasn't in that stage where radio was my primary thing in the home. It's what I listened to, but obviously I did listen to the radio over the course of my life in various ways. And I look at smart speakers as, if you look at it as a reset, but it's a reset that's learned how to be different, because you don't have just the ability to speak in a mass way to people through a smart speaker. It's prompted. And it's prompted through something that you want, right? You want to hear or you want this smart speaker, this smart device to perform an action. And I think it's in the action that we've actually now we've simplified the way a brand can deliver through the home through one of these devices. But I think it's so much at its infancy in the sense that, like, I look forward to the relationship that somebody forms with that smart device. And I think it's in that relationship that we'll actually start to see the maturity of these devices. So it's not about Alexa, play this song, or Alexa, what's the weather, or I need you to order paper towels, right? It's having a conversation with Alexa and kind of getting a little bit more intimately involved to help with things in your life. That then becomes more of the assistant, or more of the almost like the clone or the representation of you. And so from an advertiser's perspective, so that's what I'm thinking about. It's like, okay, I want to be part of that journey and that growth, that relationship that somebody goes through with their smart device. And again, I want to speak to them as an individual. I want to know their habits and listen to them and help them along the way. And if my product can do that, or if my product can maybe change something that they've been faced with, that's the conversation. I don't necessarily care as much about the task. I want to be part of that bigger picture.
So how do advertisers these days, or brands, get involved in those conversations, other than those who can provide a service like Amazon, Alexa, get me this, and they happen to have that? How do they get involved in that? 'Cause it's not traditional in-home advertising.
So it's a really good question, and obviously there's a lot of discussion, I think, at Amazon and Google about like what will be kind of allowed from an advertising perspective. So you see prominent cases, Domino's, for instance, and Domino's is also one of our clients too. But the ability to order your pizza through a smart device, through Amazon, through Alexa. So that's nice. Like the ability to get that. Like she knows me, she knows what I typically order. Alexa, please order me a pizza. I know what that's going to cost. She has my credit card. She takes care of it. So that's one place, obviously, for advertisers to use that. I think that transaction mechanism to kind of get something and to automate an aspect of our lives. But I think where I'd like to see advertisers go, and some of the stuff that we're now prototyping internally here at the community, is kind of looking at what the way we view the world, right? And the way we view the world, it can be materialized in the form of a lot of information that we read. Subsets of culture, aspects of different environments, things that are out there. We're constantly, looking at that. We're sharing it, and it kind of shapes who we are. So don't want to give away the exact ingredients, so I stayed a little bit broad there. But what I'm working on now is, how do we take that information that we know, how do we build AI kind of brains around possessing that information, that language, and then using some of these APIs, some of the custom actions, the custom skills, to be able to allow these smart devices to access that unique information, to go beyond just a database or a repository that's able to just give you quick information, and actually think deeply about subject matter to inform a person where they might not actually have enough context on that subject, and it gives them a deep insight, and it's going to help build that connection. So that's a little bit of the stuff that we're working on with when it comes to Alexa and home.
Isn't that the real power of artificial intelligence, be able to actually come up with a question and answer that a consumer didn't know they had yet?
Absolutely, right. And the ability to do it and think about it, hundreds of times faster than I can to kind of materialize the answer. Ideally, it's going to deliver something to me that's more insightful. Now, I've seen that completely fall on its face, and it spits out stuff that is unable to be read, or you can't really understand it, and you're like, okay, let's take a step back. But when that works, it can be profound, and it can actually give you a very strong competitive advantage, or just benefit you as an individual in any aspect of your life.
So how will someone get all that consumer or enough consumer information to be able to do that?
In terms of like, how will we be able to kind of find out to implement that, or like the end user experience? How will you get that in your home?
How would you get the information of all the interactions that I have with Alexa or Google Home, so that you can predict what I want later, which would be of high value to me?
So, I mean, I would like to think that the listening, right? The thing about IoT that scares people is also potentially one of the things that's going to make your question come true. If a smart device is always listening, it could really learn who I am. It could learn my shortcomings. It could learn my habits. It can, essentially shoot the gaps and help me be more efficient, or encourage me to be a better person in areas. If we're open to that, and I think if we're open to that, even in our own, our own skin, our own home, and we're able to allow our personal assistant or our smart device to really get to know me, or get to know your family, it's potentially going to unlock the ability to be that part of the family that helps, if we're open to it. So I think we'll get there to a degree, and there's a lot of ethics around it, and there's a lot of apprehension from a privacy standpoint. I get all that, and I think it's good concern, but hopefully it doesn't derail or prevent, I think, that benefit of emerging, because I love the thought of like my not having to tell my smart assistant of what to do, and it just helping, and it ordering the Uber when it knows I'm in a hurry and I haven't left yet because it's heard my voice. Why are you still home? You need a car. I've got you a car. Or it hears, you're talking about ordering dinner at 6:30, and it says, I just ordered you dinner. I ordered you this. Like, the ability to kind of shoot those gaps, because we need that as human beings so that we can focus on, I think, what really matters, and not get so caught up on all of those tasks that we have to do that we drown in.
Those are great examples. So the Google Home that's on my desk here has listened to all of my podcasts, so it should be able to be coming up for questions next time around.
So we should take all of those podcasts, and we should take every word verbatim, and we should put it into an AI engine or an AI brain, and then have people be able to ask it questions about IoT or data and see what kind of responses they get, right? I bet it would be magical.
That's probably going to be the next YouTube thing, since they transcribe all of the videos already themselves.
Yeah.
So they have all they need to do is put an engine on top of it. That, and if they could ever put in punctuation, that would be good.
Oh, you're totally right, though.
So awesome. Let's talk about some of the technologies of IoT today and where you see them fitting and going. How about virtual reality?
So I'm a huge fan of VR. I love it as a form of like escapism and entertainment, right? So I love the ability to go see a VR experience that's more at an exhibit or a festival, somewhere where it's like fully immersive. And I think if it's used for that, it's profound and it's powerful. Like, you can literally try something and you feel like you've experienced it. You feel that it's real. And the reactions that I've seen from people in the experiences that we've provided from a VR perspective, people, I mean, they get emotional. Even if it's a happy experience, you see a lot of positive emotion, driving in virtual reality, or, playing with the basketball player, as a couple of examples of projects that I've been a part of. It's magical to see that. Now, where I don't particularly love VR is more in like the kind of the fallback state. The Google Cardboard, amazing because it brought more of kind of a mass appeal for VR, but from a quality perspective, when people see something like that, or they look at a Samsung Gear and that's really all that they know to be VR, it doesn't quite have the same grip from that escapism standpoint. It doesn't necessarily feel like that ride or something magical, even if it's a beautiful piece of content that uses the full 360 space. It still doesn't quite have that extra layer, that experiential layer that I think is necessary to make VR profound and powerful. But I love it as a medium. It's been super fun to play with, and I'd like to think that we've just kind of seen the birth of it the last like 4 years. Been playing with it, but I know that NASA and other people have been playing with VR for 20 years. So I feel like from a marketing standpoint, though, we're still in the infancy with it, and we're still defining the conventions of storytelling. But I love it for what it is, and then I have a completely different opinion of AR. I think it's got a different application, but I hope VR just continues to push into. I love seeing, the Void Fusion in theme parks in Orlando, and seeing these big budget experiences, or just big ticket experiences in IMAX and theaters, and you have people like Spielberg playing in that. Like, that's really exciting because I don't know what world is going to come from it, but I want to try it.
So do you think that a lot of people, I mean, right now it's too small, as you know, from a mass market standpoint, and despite the phenomenal experience you can have, there aren't enough people to put on helmets?
I totally hear you, but I think, to be honest, like I know people want that, and they want everybody to have one, but I don't. I think that the more you scale it, the more you can water down what the experience is, or the enjoyment factor. So, I mean, there's always going to be a point where, like, yes, a Vive standalone, and maybe you have like haptic triggers in an easy way in your home, and meaning you're able to get feedback from more than just this visual thing and audio. You're able to feel. But it's just so hard to go there. Having programmed that technology with teams of people and making these experiences, we spend a lot of time, and it could get costly to make an experiential showcase with virtual reality. I look at the fit of that in your home, and I worry about being able to have that one-to-one connection. I worry about you spending this money on this equipment, getting in your house, and just kind of being like, nah, it's okay, it's kind of cool, but I'm not blown away. So I actually like where it's a little smaller, and you have to come find it and treat it more like a theater or a theme park. And I think that that's actually the sweet spot where it will survive, but maybe that's not what a lot of people want to hear. I don't find it as much of a mass consumption thing yet. When technology, I think, again, is haptics and a lot of the other stuff that make it really cool, as that starts to scale, or it's more local, maybe you go over a friend's house and you have a shared experience where it may not be in every home, but like a lot of people have this outfitted kind of VR theater or room or whatever. If we get to that point, then yeah, maybe it has mass appeal, and it still achieves that level of magic. But I don't feel we're anywhere close to it yet.
Okay, and augmented reality, on the other hand?
I think AR is more of a utility, and I think it works really well for information in situation, because I think the thing where we need help if I'm navigating, and I think about like using obviously like maps as a very small example of directions and kind of wayfinding. I mean, I remember using an AR subway app maybe 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, to help navigate like what subway was close to me in New York. And it worked perfectly then. And I think now what's happened is obviously the quality of graphics are better because of the phones and the processing of phones, but then the ability to kind of put that in glasses, or wearable devices. Now all of a sudden we can go up a notch where we can seamlessly fit it. It's a lot better in terms of graphical quality, speed of information, but I still think it works best as a utility. From my experience in AR, even the fun stuff is great, but Niantic might challenge me on that, where they've created such a cool gaming kind of environment, with Pokemon, and there are cool experiences that use it more for like entertainment. I just think in that sense, much like I think VR is more for entertainment. I think AR is best used now for utility.
Yeah, you probably saw that at Mobile World Congress that $1,300 glasses were launched, smart glasses,
Yep.
which obviously are going to be coming down the road from a lot of companies, some big companies. Do you think that people will basically adapt to that and just start wearing smart glasses over time?
I'll never forget the first time I put Google Glass on. And I
Yeah.
remember, I think it was Dr. Dre, and it was Beats that kind of, said, like, as it started coming out, and you were seeing people around, I was seeing people around LA and in Venice wearing Google Glass. And I was just like, no way. Like, I can't take this seriously in public. And then it was, I think, Dre that said, like, the biggest flaw right now is that they haven't considered fashion. They haven't considered, it's fashion, it's apparel, it's an accessory. Like, what are you putting on your face? And we don't care about how technically fresh it is. What does it look like? Because you got to wear it. So when I remember putting that on and just thinking, like, wow, I could never wear this for a long period of time. And now I think about, like, Intel's glasses and some of the other stuff that I've tried. If they nail the fashion, if I can wear, a pair of glasses, if I could have my Ray-Bans that have smart functionality that benefits me in my everyday life, of course I would do it, hands down, because I'm already wearing glasses. But if I have to wear something that's clunky or tethered, it makes a weird vibrating noise, or it just doesn't. It's unnerving. Then no way. I don't care how technically fresh it is. So we have to figure out where those two things balance. And I love, like, what I saw from Intel and what I've seen kind of come out more recently. That's just feeling like it's getting closer, from a fashion standpoint. Regardless of the cool tech glasses I've tried, because I've tried some pretty awesome ones. Fashion is definitely an important factor.
So where do you see screens in the future? At CES, there were demos of screens that are going to replace rear view mirrors and replace all the mirrors in cars. Screens in homes are being replaced by audio devices. What do you see as the future of consumers interacting with screens?
I'm in the camp right now that screens will eventually be gone. I think it's an inevitability. I mean, I know, I'm not the first one to say that. There's a lot of people out there saying that, but, from the evidence I have, to what you can experience, and thinking about, like, I guess the evolution of where AR will go, and some of the stuff that, Intel's working on in terms of processing. And I think screens are going to be gone. I think that, if I can get everything I need out of glasses, and eventually, I mean, there's smart lenses too, right? So think about, the evolution of the glasses, and they're just going to continue to get smaller. The power now of a watch, the connectivity of a watch. If I can put that information, in somebody's eye through a lens or through glasses or whatever, in terms of on the go, I won't need a phone. And then in the home is another area where, screens, right, were very prevalent, like presentation screens, TV screens. And I think about if again, if it's a shared viewing experience, is the point where, like, I think the screen will last the longest, because if I'm watching TV, I can totally watch TV on one of these smart lenses or whatever, right? I can put the TV, up on the wall, and I can watch it. But what happens when it's a shared viewing experience? We all need to watch it. We need to kind of coordinate it. Like, how do we control it? I think that's a little bit tricky, where it's kind of shared computing and it's not delivered through a hard wire, or even, it's a shared kind of wireless experience. Like, that's probably going to happen, but it's going to take longer. But I firmly believe, I don't know how many years, man, but in 10 years, like, we're probably going to be looking at maybe 50% less, 40% less screens than we are now, and eventually, like, why not? If technology allows it, I don't need a screen. I'll just wear the tech.
You live in innovation. Where in an organization do you think innovation should reside?
I think
should it be separate, or should
yeah.
everyone? I mean, part of your role is to make sure everybody understands what's going on, I presume. In an organization, like a big company, they can't have everybody up to speed.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think innovation, to be honest, in more than just a department, it's a mindset. So I like to think of it this way. I want to try to spread what I know and help kind of people understand innovation, the concepts within it, the technology, but I want them to be thinking about it the same way I think about it. And I want them to be kind of bringing it up and ingraining in whatever they come up with. It's going to help them understand concepts that come from other people, and it's going to help them generate their own ideas. So for me, it's a mindset. Like I'm just, kind of the leader of that mindset here. Hopefully gonna spread it, continue to spread it amongst all of our different, different offices, because we're in 4 states now. We're actually in 3 countries, London, Argentina, and the US. So for me, it's about bringing innovation to the other factions of the business, but it needs to be integral in everything, more so than a division, more so than just, different people within the company. I want innovation to really breathe throughout all levels, account management, strategy, certainly creative, and how does it go into the making side of things as well in production. We all need to be able to speak it, to understand it, to breathe it, and not be scared of it. And I think if we do that, innovation ceases to exist as a department. You're just known as an innovative company, and people take notice of that. And I'm not saying I want to, come to a point where my division is no longer necessary, but I think that's just naturally how it progresses. And everywhere I've ever been in my career, everybody just loves to touch kind of the new emerging technology and integrate the concepts. And I feel like it's always a growth of people and knowledge, and it's never stayed in a small core. It's always kind of just expanded everywhere.
Great stuff. Thank you, Chris Neff, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thank you, Chuck. It was an absolute pleasure.